The Cash Landrum incident. On a cold December night in 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's 7-year-old grandson Colby were driving home after a delightful dinner on State Road 1485, just outside Houston, Texas. Little did they know that they were about to star in their own episode of jaw-dropping alien encounters. They spotted the light in the sky, and after a closer look, they realized it was definitely not an airplane. It was a diamond-shaped object, spewing flames and radiating an intense heat that they could feel from inside the car. The heat was so extreme that Vicki's handprint was left burned into the vehicle. As fear set in, thoughts of death began to haunt them. How could a pleasant night turn so dreadful in an instant? But it wasn't just that night. The events would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Years went by, and they continued to seek answers from the government about what truly happened that evening and whether it was a UFO. Yet, no thorough investigation was conducted, and no official report was ever produced. It was frustrating enough that the authorities dismissed their claims, but what was worse was the onset of strange illnesses following the incident. That very night, Vicki and Colby experienced fever and nausea, and by the next morning they discovered sunburn-like marks on their skin. Betty's condition was even more severe. Her fever soared, and the sunburn manifested as painful red welts across her body. As her health continued to decline, she finally sought medical attention. 3 weeks later, she was diagnosed with acute radiation poisoning. Within 6 weeks, she had lost more than half of her hair, a clear indication of the high dose of radiation she had been exposed to. Desperate for answers, Betty contacted John Schuessler, a UFO investigator, while Vicki continued to press the government, convinced that the military was involved. Eventually, the Air Force agreed to meet with them, but the meeting quickly turned into an interrogation. For over 2 hours, Vicki and Betty were questioned, only for the Air Force to conclude that neither the government nor the military had any involvement in the incident. They were informed that they could file a claim for review, but their requests for medical damages were ultimately denied. It turned out that being toasted by a UFO wasn't covered under their insurance policy. What did Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum witness on that fateful night? According to UFO investigator John Schuessler, there are only 2 possible explanations: an experimental government project or an unidentified flying object from another planet. However, there's a third option, a wildly intense game of cosmic frisbee that went horribly wrong. Unfortunately, after the incident, Betty Cash spent 18 years in the hospital receiving treatment for cancer until her passing at the age of 69. Yet the government has still refused to review the incident to this day. The Rendlesham Forest incident. During the same period as the Cash Landrum UFO incident, an unidentified object was reported in Rendlesham Forest on England's east coast. Similar to the Cash Landrum case, the government kept all details under wraps. The only insights available to the public have come from investigations conducted by curious civilian researchers. On December 26, 1980, curious eyewitnesses tracked a luminous object as it vanished into the woods. Soldiers dispatched to investigate the site reported seeing a triangular flying object that was illuminated. Measuring approximately 10 feet wide and 8 feet high, it stood on 3 legs. If it were an alien, it might have assumed humans were indoors unwrapping presents, given it was Boxing Day. How wrong it was. The object appeared to flee as the soldiers pursued it. Eventually, it ascended into the sky, emitting a bright light. In an instant, the soldiers collapsed and had to be rescued. Interestingly, when the rescue team arrived later, they discovered tripod marks on the ground where the UFO had rested. The news spread like wildfire, prompting the base commander to dispatch search parties into the forest. What they discovered shocked them to their core. First, they detected an unusually high level of radiation on the UFO's landing site. Then they began to see strange lights, one emerging from the fog and another from moving shadows. It was like a rave party for ghosts and aliens. Although CNN reported that films and photographs were taken of these events, the government and military have denied their existence. Much like looking at evidence and still screaming, "Hey, nothing to see here." So when the US government became aware of the situation, they launched an extensive investigation into the credibility of the rumored UFO sightings. However, the results of that investigation remain classified to this day. Whatever those eyewitnesses saw was definitely something. The Shag Harbor UFO incident. We've seen that UFOs can ascend until they're out of sight, but what happens when they crash into the sea? Do they simply disappear, or do they transform into USOs, unidentified submerged objects? On a cold night in 1967, something crashed into the waters of Shag Harbor, Canada from the sky. About a dozen witnesses saw it approach the harbor, and then, bang, it crashed into the water like a bomb. The initial report came from Wickens and his 4 friends who were driving through Shag Harbor at the time of the incident. They witnessed the object plunge into the water and saw it floating 250 to 300 meters offshore. Believing it to be a crashed airplane, they immediately contacted the RCMP detachment in Barrington Passage. Officers from the department immediately arrived at the scene with the hope of rescuing the passengers on board the crashed airplane. But before anything could be done, the object began to sink until it vanished. The military quickly became involved in rescue, recovery, and research efforts. A rescue mission was assembled, and within 30 minutes, boats were deployed to search the waters off Shag Harbor for survivors. They were prepared for everything, except little green men with snorkels. Surprisingly, after an intense search, no survivors, bodies, or debris were found, not even any green men. By the following day, the Canadian Coast Guard cutter received confirmation that all aircraft, both private and military, were accounted for across all provinces, with no losses reported. It was starting to look like a mystery, or perhaps the world's most elaborate game of hide and seek. That same day, a message was sent to the air desk responsible for UFO sightings, detailing the situation and requesting an investigation, officially labeling it as a UFO report. Soon after, the Navy was contacted to conduct an underwater search. The rigorous search lasted 3 days, but ultimately, nothing was found. Whatever the object was, it had clearly mastered the art of the Irish goodbye, leaving no trace behind. The Hudson Valley UFO Wave. New York's Hudson River Valley is undoubtedly an exquisite location, and few would expect it to be the site of a UFO sighting. Yet to everyone's surprise, that's exactly what happened. Dennis Sant and his family, who witnessed the incident, described it as a dark metallic object with 3-dimensional lights quietly hovering in the sky. Meanwhile, a few miles away, drivers on the road also stopped to gaze at the strange luminous object. But the story doesn't end there. A week later, a police officer spotted the object. Just 10 minutes later, a computer engineer driving on the Taconic Parkway, along with 20 others, witnessed the exact same phenomenon. Burns noted that his radio suddenly lost signal, and when he looked up, he saw the object. Like the previous eyewitnesses, he described it as having 3-dimensional lights and being completely silent. Another 10 minutes later, calls flooded into the police station as people feared an alien invasion. However, when the government became aware of the incident, they dismissed these concerns, claiming the UFO was simply a cluster of airplanes flying information. The public, however, remained unconvinced, with eyewitnesses steadfastly standing by their accounts. Now, while you may not be able to build your own flying saucer, you can definitely create your own YouTube channel. That is why we are excited to introduce our partner for today, Tube Mastery. Tube Mastery is a comprehensive online course designed to help you build your YouTube channel from the ground up. It provides clear step-by-step instructions to accelerate your channel's growth. Simply click on the link in the description to get more information and get started today. That said, back to the video. O'Hare International Airport Saucer. A UFO was seen again in 2006, but this time it was at the airport. Sounds ideal, right? Well, you can guess what happened next. It disappeared again. Sometime in 2006, a massive saucer-like object hovered over O'Hare International Airport in Illinois. It lingered for several minutes before speeding off into the clouds. The site left airline workers in a state of fear. Could it have been an alien spaceship? Perhaps a lost weather balloon, a military aircraft, or even light reflections playing tricks on the eyes. The Federal Aviation Administration reported no evidence of the incident, stating that no controllers observed any unusual objects, and their radar checks revealed nothing suspicious. In their final report, they attributed the sighting to weather conditions. Yes, because we all know how common it is for the weather to spontaneously create giant hovering saucers. As expected, this left the witnesses feeling not only confused, but also angry. It seemed the government and the airline had little interest in investigating the incident further. The United States and the United Kingdom have reported a higher incidence of UFO sightings compared to other countries. Yet no serious investigations are being done by the governments and military into these sightings. Could there be a secret these governments are hiding? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible discoveries. See you soon.